I'm here to own it. I owe an apology to Robert James Ritchie, a.k.a. Kid Rock. Good morning, 6:04. It is great to be here on a post-Super Bowl Monday on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Mark is decked out in his Seahawks gear after a Super Bowl victory last night over the New England Patriots, his second favorite team after the Chiefs. How does it feel when your second favorite team wins a Super Bowl versus your first favorite team, Mark?
It still feels really good, I will say. It kind of makes up for Marshawn Lynch not running it in about 11 years ago. Not quite, but it still feels good to beat the Patriots.
That always feels good. Watching the Patriots lose does feel good. So congratulations to you as someone who was born up in Seattle on getting that win yesterday for your Seahawks. And I think all of Kansas City enjoyed watching the Patriots lose yesterday. So that was a good deal all around.
One of my friends at church, his son said, I was going to cheer for the Patriots, but I want the Chiefs to get closer to having more Super Bowls than the Patriots. So I'm going for the Seahawks.
That's a good angle. That's a good angle. Optimistic angle, but a good angle. So as for Robert James Ritchie, I was knocking him all week, okay? I was like, I'm not excited about this Kid Rock halftime show. I told you all week I was going to stand in the bathroom for 20 minutes, but I was home with the girls. None of them had to go. So I was in and I was out, which is unusual. So what I did is, I had Bad Bunny on TV, and then I had the Kid Rock, Lee Brice halftime show, Gabby Barrett, on my phone. And I was kind of watching both. It's difficult to do, especially when they're being done in different languages, right? But I will say this much. First off, I wish Kid Rock used his voice early in his career in ways that he's been using it lately. I think about the early days of Kid Rock, and I think about the guy that's screaming and quasi-rapping, right? And I'm like, oh, gosh, what is he doing? Oh, my goodness, this is so unappealing. But then I actually hear him sing last night, and I'm like, all right, Kid Rock has some pipes, man. Kid Rock has some pipes. He's leaning into it. He's owning it. He's doing covers, but not really covers, spin-offs of Cody Johnson, which was something that really stood out to me last night. It was good. It was good. And if you missed it, here's just a little bit of Kid Rock, and then I'll explain how we got here and why this was such a disastrous night for the NFL on so many levels.
There's a book that's sitting in your house somewhere that could use some dusting off. There's a man who died for all our sins, hanging from the cross. You can give your life to Jesus, and He'll give you a second chance till you can't take it. If you got a chance, take it while you got a chance. If you got a dream.
So if that was Kid Rock and that was his voice and that was the guy that we got last night at the Super Bowl halftime show, I was like, you know what? That guy sounded good. And he took a spinoff of Cody Johnson's Till You Can and put his own little juice into it there, is what you heard him do. And for the NFL, the numbers came in. I was watching on YouTube. There were about 5 million viewers concurrently. Turning Point USA said they had upwards on all the platforms, 15 to 20 million people watching it last night. And that obviously is just streamers. We don't know how many people are at these parties watching this game or watching this halftime show during the Super Bowl game at these Super Bowl parties. So how many tens of millions of people were actually tuned in to watch Kid Rock, to watch Lee Brice, to watch Gabby Barrett? You got to figure it's at the minimum 20, 30 million people. That is a disaster for the NFL. And it's a disaster that the NFL did not see coming. The NFL basically abused its diehard fan to the point where finally somebody in a free market system said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create an alternate to your halftime show. We're sick of Kendrick Lamar. We certainly, at the very least, I mean, it was hard enough to understand Kendrick Lamar last year. Now I definitely couldn't understand Bad Bunny, what was going on last night, but at least Kendrick Lamar was rapping in English last year. Now you got Bad Bunny. The NFL basically pushed its fan to the brink. And somebody finally stepped in and said, you know what? We're going to give you another option. And I don't think it's stopping. I don't think this was a one-off for Turning Point USA. In fact, in many respects, I believe now with a full year of planning, they'll be able to put something together that's hopefully even a little bit bigger, even a little bit better. As much as I'm apologizing to Kid Rock here, there is bigger and better than Kid Rock. What could they do with a full year of preparation? And if you're a company and you're paying $8 million for a Super Bowl ad, and your ad got played at halftime last night, are you very happy right now? I don't think so, John.
Yeah, Eric Clapton hosts like these guitar festivals like every couple of years, and so he's kind of like the main thing. He's not necessarily headlining and playing the biggest amount of time. It's just a rotating thing. So Kid Rock could be the MC, if you will, maybe do a couple of songs, but also have other people on, to your point. You make it up, get it going as a series, an ongoing thing.
I would love that. That's a great idea. I thought Kid Rock did a very nice job with everything I saw last night. And, you know, the why behind this, it's interesting. I was just listening to a podcast about 2 weeks ago, and it was a podcast with the CMO of the NFL. His name is Tim Ellis. And Tim Ellis went on the CMO podcast. Now, I don't know if Tim Ellis is the guy who makes the decision on the halftime show. I'm sure he has some input as the chief marketing officer of the league. But if you go back and listen to that podcast, and I may put up a whole thread on social media about this, but it was sent to me by somebody in the corporate world. And what stood out to me is that the CMO of the NFL, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm basically also saying exactly what he said. He said in this podcast, the halftime show is basically the NFL's opportunity to brand themselves to people who don't typically watch the sport and watch the league. They do not care, and this is their words, this is his words. They do not care about the 35-year-old plus white dude. They feel like they've got that guy on lockdown. He can complain. You can throw your hands up and say, oh, you know what, Bad Bunny, this up there. What about Roger Rabbit? Who's next? Like, you can do that whole thing. But in the end, they used the NFL and they used that halftime show at the Super Bowl to try to bring in new audience. The problem is, what happens when you finally tick off your original audience to the point where they have other options? And that's what the NFL never considered. What if there was another option? What if there was an alternative? Well, there was last night. And all in all, you know what? For slapping this thing together in a few weeks, for not having a lot of runway to work with, it was a home run. And honestly, I said all last week, you know, jokingly somewhat, tongue-in-cheek, I didn't think it was going to be all that good. But I was wrong about that, John.
Well, you mentioned not having enough runway. They didn't give themselves enough runway. Why? We were talking about it sometime and kept hearing nothing for a while. So, lesson learned there, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, they started this whenever it was announced 4 months ago, and then we heard nothing for a while. But now
they assumed it was even other performers potentially. But anyway,
now they've got 12 months to turn around and figure out what are we doing next year.
Exactly.
You know, so they have a lot more time to go out there and try to figure out what they want to do next year with another halftime show. With an option, if you're an NFL fan, to flip your television just during halftime, which, by the way, because it's 30 minutes, the halftime's 30 minutes because they got to get the stage out there, they got to get the stage off, you got to have the performance. You have time to flip your TV to a streaming service to go watch Turning Point USA or whatever it might be. I'm not saying it's going to overtake the halftime show next year. I'm just saying, in many respects, it's where we've been trending as a country, culturally, politically divided. And I don't love that for America, but the NFL's done this to itself. The NFL just basically took its core audience for granted so long and so often and so frequently that finally somebody stood up and said enough's enough. And the show was well produced last night. The singers were solid. Lee Brice was very good. And, Kid Rock exceeded my expectations. So, all in all, Robert James Ritchie, I'll give him the apology. It was well-deserved. And to all of you Kid Rock fans who wanted to give me a hard time last week, you win. All right? You got me. I'm in. 913-408-7957. But Mark is the ultimate winner with his Seahawks gear on. He's got the throwback Seattle Seahawks tee. Wow, that's nice, man.
Classic,
that's real nice.
Classic.
That looks real good. It's great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up next, how many of you are calling out today? Now, we're here. Mark's here. John's here. But we have new data on how many people are not showing up to work today. It's not as big as it was last year, which might tell you something about job stability and the economy right now.
Hope no one was operating heavy machinery during that game, right?
That was ugly last night. So what are those numbers we'll share with you coming up next on KCMO? I know it's going to be a slow morning for a lot of people getting up, getting at it, and thinking about, oh, my goodness, I ate too much at that Super Bowl party last night. I might have had one too many drinks. I'm just going to call in sick. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm here to fire you up at 6:21 on a Monday morning. Get up, get at it. You owe it to your employer. You owe it to yourself. Be a good citizen. Be a good employee. Get out there and do it. Do it. 26 million people, that's the number, that could end up taking off today in some way, shape, or form. However, most of those people are using PTO. They scheduled this. I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure it's a good look to use the Monday after the Super Bowl as PTO unless you're in the city where the Super Bowl is being played. Or I should say, if you're in a city that has a team in the Super Bowl. But like if you're in Kansas City this morning and you use today for PTO, like, I'm just going to need it off. That's a terrible look. I'm sorry. That is a terrible, that's like, man, that's like taking off on your birthday.
It's like wicked slow at Duncan and Worcester today.
I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. By the way, the Dunkin' Donuts Goodwill Hunting ad, that was very good. That was well done with Ben Affleck last night. But, the number of people who are going to just no-show today, the estimates are 1.6 million workers will just no-show. That is down from 3.3 million last year. That's a big drop. What does that tell me? That tells me that people are feeling less secure at their jobs right now. That's my read on it. Unless there were just that many Chiefs fans who last year were like, you know what, we're just going to no-show if they win. Or on the other side, those Eagles fans, I mean, they're looking for a reason to be bums anyway. So they might just figure, hey, if we win the Super Bowl, I'm not showing up to work. But that wasn't the case. At least that's not projected to be the case based on a poll I saw last night. That half the amount of people are going to no-show today for work than did last year. That's a good sign. That's a trend in the right direction. But here's what's going to happen, and this is actually taking place next year. Next year, the Super Bowl is on Valentine's Day, which means the day after is President's Day. So for many of you, you're off anyway on President's Day. I mean, we're technically off, but we always work on President's Day and MLK Day here. Most people aren't necessarily off. I know some people are, federal holiday, the whole thing. But that's where the NFL wants to be. The NFL wants the Super Bowl to be the Sunday before President's Day. And they're getting it next year. I don't know if it's just it must be just how the calendar is falling. Because typically what the NFL has wanted to do here the last couple of years, it's the worst kept secret. They want an 18-game regular season so they can extend the season by one more week and push the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend to have everybody off on Monday. They're just getting lucky, as I understand it, next year with the way the calendar falls. But that's why the NFL wants an 18th regular season game. They don't like the odd number at 17. If they can push it back 1 week, that then allows them to make Super Bowl weekend, President's Day weekend, which works out for people who are traveling, who want to take off the next day, who want to party even harder. That's what it opens up the door to.
If they make it an 18-game regular season, I think that they can get that where it will be every year.
Yes.
Will be on President's Day.
And that's their goal. Every single year, they want to be on President's Day weekend for that Super Bowl. But you know what? It's going to create a lot of angst for some people who are like, oh, no, what do? I got Valentine's Day, and then I got the Super Bowl, and oh, my goodness, how do I make this work? You better start planning now, okay? Now, you would not need to call in today if you took the advice of RFK Jr., Health and Human Services Secretary with the administration. He was asked yesterday on Fox News Sunday, which airs at 10 a.m. right here on KCMO Talk Radio, what you should be snacking on at the Super Bowl. And here's what he had to say.
Super Bowl Sunday today is a snacking holiday in the U.S. You are as the CEO of Maha, what would you have as a Super Bowl snack?
I am on a carnivore diet, so I just eat meat and ferments, and I'm very happy with that. So I'm going to probably have yogurt, and people can eat what they want. You can even eat buffalo wings, but you should check the ingredient. If there's a lot of seed oils, if there's corn syrup in it, if there's artificial flavors, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
RFK Jr. yesterday on Fox News Sunday. You going to steal that carnivore diet from him there, John, where you just kind of buy a couple of Big Macs and just eat the meat in the middle? Is that your carnivore diet that you've done through McDonald's?
I'll tell you, that sounds like a deal. Skip the yogurt, though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what. I did my first ever buffalo wings yesterday, and I was real pleased with how those things came out. And I didn't know if the girls were going to like them. I did half buffalo. I did half honey barbecue, homemade honey barbecue sauce. Used some LC's barbecue sauce here in town and mixed it up in the whole deal. They were loving it. They were into it, man. So took RFK's advice. I didn't know that was his advice. I saw that clip last night. Made some buffalo wings, had the celery out, the blue cheese, the ranch, the carrots, the whole deal. And, man, I could have kept going. Buffalo wings all day, every day. What did you guys have last night? What was on the menu at home?
I had enchiladas,
Oh!
actually. It was not to coincide with Bad Bunny or anything, but it just happened to be that. So.
Wanted to honor Bad Bunny with the finest Vince Sickle enchilada.
Well, actually, it was my wife's friend brought it over.
Oh,
so.
that's very nice.
Very nice of them.
All right. How about you there, John?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Yeah, just
Okay.
kind of power grazed, I guess, if you will.
Power grazed.
Yeah.
I like that phrase, the power grazed.
Had leftover from Saturday night and Friday.
Okay.
That
All
kind
right.
of thing. Just like, well, there's half a portion of that, and there's a half a portion of this.
And before you know it, you got a full meal.
Bam!
All right. Very nice. Very well done. Very well done. Well, as we roll through a busy morning here on KCMO Talk Radio, the search continues for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Savannah Guthrie. Of course, today is the second deadline, or what's believed to be the second deadline, by whoever it is that is holding Nancy Guthrie. Where does this search go from here? What do we know? We'll share all that with you coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio. By the way, at 7 o'clock, the mayor of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Crystal Watson, is going to be on this show at 7. And then Roger Marshall comes up at 7:30. Search is continuing for Savannah Guthrie's mother, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. It has extended now into a Monday morning. And what you had over the weekend, if you missed it, was Savannah Guthrie flanked by her siblings, Cameron and Annie, releasing a video begging for their mother's safe return and telling Nancy's abductors, quote, "We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her." Guthrie saying the family was willing to pay for the return of her mother, who vanished January 31st. And, of course, no one really knows what's going on, the where, the why, the who. There's now a septic tank that's being investigated. We know her pacemaker was disconnected from her phone early on Sunday morning. That would have been Sunday, February 1st, last week. And really, there's been no trace of her ever since. There's a deadline today that apparently exists via a ransom note that was sent to TMZ and KOLD TV in Tucson, demanding $6 million in Bitcoin for Nancy's safe return. The note listed a deadline of 5 p.m. on February 5th. That was, of course, last Thursday. That's since expired. A second deadline is coming up today. So if this note is obviously what people think it is, and this is the one ransom note, there's been a couple of knockoff imposter ransom notes. There was one guy who got arrested for being an imposter, but this is a ransom note that law enforcement believes to be a legitimate ransom note. So over the weekend, I thought this was notable. Billy Bush, who used to be Savannah Guthrie's co-host on the Today Show, was on Fox News Sunday. Once again, that airs at 10 a.m. Sundays here on KCMO Talk Radio. And Billy Bush told Fox that this should be a very easy decision. If Nancy Guthrie is available and well and alive, and it's, let's say, $6 million in Bitcoin, well, that is a stroke of the pen for NBC. Here's what Billy Bush had to say.
You used to work at NBC with Savannah Guthrie. What is your take on what's going on with her mom, especially now that this video the family dropped has removed the demand for a proof of life?
I know. I feel like I'm watching some kind of streaming series, you know. It's like, this can't be real. It's the most surreal thing in the world. This woman that everybody feels like they know on the Today Show is all of a sudden addressing a camera, talking to a kidnapper about ransom. We will pay your demands. It's like, real? How is this even possible? So I think there's just a ton of dismay. The tone in Savannah's second posting yesterday was notably more beaten down, sad, wearing the same clothes as she was wearing in the first one. She's obviously, getting no sleep at all. Some people are reading into that this this could be a sign that, we want the return of our mom so we can celebrate with her. What does that mean? I would not, at this point go speculate. I frankly think it's, there's reason to be very hopeful and optimistic. I mean, the report is that there's at Monday by 5 o'clock, they want a $6 million Bitcoin ransom. That means that Nancy Guthrie is well, and $6 million for NBC is a quick stroke of a quick hit send, and they should be able to get that done very easily. And I don't, the idea that Nancy Guthrie would be at that point. This is obviously a greedy little somebody who understands how VPNs work, virtual private networks, and how to hide your internet address. And, seriously enough that the FBI, can't seem to get there now in its 8th day. But I believe that money will be exchanged, and let's get Nancy back, and then let's find them and let these people meet the ultimate consequence.
So that was Billy Bush yesterday on Fox News Sunday here on KCMO Talk Radio. And the only thing that Billy Bush got wrong there is when he's like, oh, this is just some young punk who understands how VPNs work. There is no way we are sitting here on a 9th day of this woman missing with the entire nation watching, and now the FBI involved for the better part of a week, have no idea what's going on, and have it being some punk, living out of his mom's basement who knows how VPNs work. This feels very coordinated. This feels like a high-level operation to me. Somebody who clearly knows exactly what they're doing and was well-suited and prepared to pull something like this off. So for Billy Bush to kind of, I think he's just trying to maybe downplay the individual as the scumbag that they are, which is fair, but this is not like someone who just learned how to operate a VPN. This was clearly someone or someone's, I think we're talking about a group here of people who were clearly tied in with this plan, knew exactly how to maneuver it and pull it off. And you know what? Now they have this woman hostage on a 9th day with this Monday deadline coming up real fast as the search for Nancy Guthrie continues on. That deadline is today at 5 o'clock Mountain Time to pay that sum in Bitcoin. And something else that popped up over the weekend on this story was the fact that it was Megyn Kelly who reported that NBC is now concerned that they may have contributed to this in some way, and not directly, but in a roundabout way. And what I mean by that is they had Savannah Guthrie put her mother on the air as like a get to know the family kind of a segment last fall. And they're starting to have buyer's remorse over this, basically wondering how much should we put the families of these anchors on television? Are we setting these people up to be put in situations like, God forbid, what Savannah Guthrie's dealing with right now? I don't blame them for that. I mean, part of how media works is obviously you want to get to know the personality. But as is always the question, at what cost? How much do you get to know that personality? To the point where you can look up exactly where they live, who they are, what their background is, and how you could potentially extort the famous anchor for money? This just feels like a perfect Hollywood storm that has come together, and I don't know if NBC is the company that I would put a lot of blame on right now, because everybody in media is doing that. You could go on someone's Instagram and find a picture of their family member, right? I mean, that's the world that we live in right now. But I understand also NBC wanting to take the approach of, maybe we shouldn't be doing that and flaunting families of these celebrities and these anchors all over TV for millions of people to see. Now, before we get to our 6 at 6, something I'm watching today that I hope gets a lot more attention. The world's biggest social media companies are facing several landmark trials this year, seeking to hold them responsible for the harms to children who use their platforms. Opening arguments for the first in Los Angeles County Superior Court begin this week. This is going to come with Meta and Google facing claims that their platforms deliberately addict and harm children. TikTok and Snapchat were originally named in this lawsuit, but they settled for undisclosed sums of money. At the core of this case that starts this week in L.A. is a 19-year-old identified only by the initials KGM. This is going to be a test case and could determine how thousands of other similar lawsuits against social media companies are going to play out. It's the first time the companies will argue their case before a jury. And the outcome could have enormous effects on their businesses and how they handle children using their platforms. So KGM, this child, claims that her use of social media from an early age addicted her to the technology and exacerbated depression and suicidal thoughts. The lawsuit claims that this was done through deliberate design choices made by companies that sought to make their platforms more addictive to children to boost profits. This argument, if successful, could sidestep the company's First Amendment shield and Section 230, which protects tech companies from liability for material posted on their platforms. It's expected that Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg will be testifying at trial, which will last 6 to 8 weeks. Now, I have long been a fan of the government trying to ban social media for children under the age of 18. Or I guess just children by and large. If you're under 18, you're a minor, you're a child. I would love to see Congress do that. Congress can't do anything. The lobbyists are obviously way too powerful for these big tech companies right now. But if I could wave my magic wand and put something on President Trump's desk, it would be that. That being said, there still is an element to this that has to fall on the parents, okay? It's like anything else. I mean, we need to have laws that protect kids, smoking, drinking, car rentals, things like that. But at the same time, you as an adult, as a parent, have to be responsible here too. So in a weird way, as much as I am not looking, and I just knocked, people who are lobbying for big tech, I mean, they're legally allowed to do it. I don't know if this case is going to stand because in the end, these tech companies have not yet done anything that's technically illegal. As a parent, it's your job to protect your kids from these platforms. But if we can get the best of both worlds, where parents start to wake up and we actually have a Congress that is able to do its job and look out for young people and put the kids first and not the tech companies first, then we got something cooking. Both of those things can be, and in my eyes, should be true at the same time. So this is going to be a fascinating case to follow this week. And if you have kids or grandkids, because it's not just about what your kid or your grandkid is doing, it's about what their friends are doing as well. And if this case moves forward, that potentially changes the landscape on social media for a very long time. And by the way, it may not be for the better, because if Section 230 goes away, which protects the tech companies from liability for material posted on their platforms, and they're now suddenly in charge of having to potentially go out there and monitor and determine right from wrong on places like YouTube, well, that will have ramifications for everybody, and some of that may not be good, believe it or not. Well, the President of the United States did not hold back when commenting on Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show last night. I know you thought that Trump might be a little reserved after the last few days. No. Nope. No way, no how. If you missed it, by the way, here's what Bad Bunny sounded like.
Pero no hay boda, Titi me preguntó si tengo muchas novias, ey. Muchas novias, hoy tengo a una, mañana otra, ey. Me la voy a llevar a todas pa' un VIP.
I mean, the beat's not terrible, but I put up a Biden GIF last night, and I was like, this is me watching Bad Bunny. I didn't know what I was watching, and it was just a confused Biden GIF. I especially like the two dudes grinding on each other. That was something to see last night. I know that there were some family values. Mark and I were texting about this, and Mark noted that there was a couple that got engaged, or I should say married, during the halftime show.
Yeah, they actually got really married, which
yes.
was a little, I didn't realize that at first until afterwards.
Yes, they actually got really married. So, that's kind of cool, I guess, right? But here was the President of the United States saying last night, the Super Bowl halftime show is absolutely terrible and one of the worst ever. It makes no sense, an affront to the greatness of America, and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy's saying. I love how he just puts it up there. He's right, by the way. No one understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching throughout the USA and all over the world. The show is a slap in the face to our country, which is setting new standards and records every single day, including the best stock market and 401ks in history. There's nothing inspirational about this mess of a halftime show. And watch, it'll get great reviews from the fake news media because they haven't got a clue of what's going on in the real world. And by the way, the NFL should immediately replace its ridiculous new kickoff rule. Make America great again. President Donald J. Trump. That's a very underrated post by the president because he actually absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. If I told you 20 years ago, it was 19, 20 years ago when Prince did the halftime show. You had that run of Prince and Tom Petty and the Stones, that we would, less than 20 years later, be watching a halftime show that was not in English. What would you say? What would you think? Would you call me a conspiracy theorist? Probably. Oh, no, that's just too far. That's just too much. I know that'll never happen. You're crazy, man. Well, we saw it last night. Now, on the flip side, you had Kid Rock. And you had that show going on Turning Point USA. And I watched both. I know I told you I was just going to go to the bathroom for 20 minutes, but, didn't have to. So I figured I'd watch. And I got Bad Bunny on the TV. I got the Turning Point USA halftime show on my phone. And I'm monitoring both, right? Just to kind of see what they're doing, what the numbers are. So I saw on YouTube, Turning Point USA got up to 5 million concurrent views on their live stream. And that was just on their YouTube. There were other platforms that were handling this as well. You had Daily Wire Plus, Ben Shapiro's outlet. You had a lot of different outlets that were carrying this, Rumble and other places like that. So you figure tens of millions of people, because if it's just 5 million on YouTube streamers, I mean, how many people are at each of these Super Bowl parties watching this thing, right? Just stack it up. You're talking tens of millions of people that were watching the other halftime show that was slapped together in a couple of weeks and had, very little promotion to speak of. And it was solid. I mean, listen, I started off the show this morning apologizing to Kid Rock. I'm not a huge Kid Rock fan, but he showed me some pipes last night that I didn't think he had. So I'll give Kid Rock that much. He can sing. I wish he'd sing more instead of whatever that rap thing is that he does. But he was good. The show was solid, especially given the quick turnaround time. But I also thought to myself that this is kind of a sad moment in America, because the Super Bowl is still like the last thing that we all have that unifies us culturally. It used to be like TV shows, Friends, Seinfeld. We had communal things that we would watch. That's out the window. Oh, then we had the Oscars and the Grammys. That's out the window. All that is left is the Super Bowl. And last night was potentially the beginning of the end of that now getting fractured as well. Because with the success that they had, I don't believe it's ending anytime soon. I don't think they're going to sit here and be like, you know what, we won't do this again. I think it's the start of what's going to be an annual thing, since the NFL keeps pushing away from its core fan with these Super Bowl halftime shows. Jonathan's in Kansas City. Go ahead.
Man.
Jonathan, go ahead, my man.
Wallace, when he was interviewing Johnny Carson, and Johnny said, hey, if you...
All right, I don't know what's
late night didn't heed the warning, and Hollywood hasn't heeded it, and maybe the NFL's not going to heed it, and we're going to end up with, the Super Bowl being like late night, where you only get half the country to watch it, and the ratings keep declining, and they start losing money. Maybe that's what's going to have to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen because there's not another option. Could it happen for the halftime show going forward? Yes. It's not going to happen for the NFL. I mean, listen, conservatives claimed going back to Kaepernick, I'm boycotting the NFL. No, you're not. We didn't. Let's not pretend like we did. But the halftime show, yeah, I do think the NFL has pushed its diehard fan to the point where now the free market reacted. Turning Point USA said, we've got an option for you here. What do you think? Let's do it. And last night turned out to be, for them, a big success and a huge defeat for the NFL. Yeah, the days of Springsteen doing Dancing in the Dark at halftime, that's a distant memory, too. That run of, the Stones, Tom Petty, Springsteen, those days feel like a distant memory, don't they?
A little white.
Yeah. Well, you bring that up there, John. The last white male to do the halftime show was Adam Levine, Maroon 5. Year before him was Justin Timberlake. We're on a run here. Haven't seen one since. Just saying.
There's not any, maybe this is just my opinion, but there's not many great, new rock bands anymore,
Yeah, I think it reflects what's going on in music.
Yeah,
I think.
That's fair. That's fair. No, you're right about that. I understand that. But still, you're on this kind of, you're on this run here, and it's motivated by getting in younger fans who are not traditional NFL fans to consume the sport. That's it. That's their goal. That's what it's all about. So they're not trying to double down on the diehard fan who already watches the NFL 17 weeks in the regular season, then all the postseason, and then the Super Bowl. That's not who they're trying to cater to. So the commercials last night. Did you see this? The ICE commercial that dropped? Take a listen to this. This was very well done, by the way, by DHS and the federal government, obviously, who paid the money to run this ad. And I thought it was a very important message given what this country has gone through over the last couple of months.
They're friends and neighbors, sons, fathers. They're little league coaches and veterans. They're people who love this country. These are Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers. They are removing violent criminals from our streets and neighborhoods. It's dangerous and difficult work. But ICE has one mission: to make America a safer place to live, and that's what they're doing. This is law enforcement. This is ICE.
that goal was to humanize ICE. That's what the commercial was all about. These are men and women, many of whom, by the way, are veterans coming back to the country and serving their country in a different way. And their goal is to make communities safer. That's it. Now, do I think that dramatically changes where we're at right now in America? And, some people are going to see the ad and be like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Well, I just never put two and two together. No, that's not going to come out of this. But it's nice to hear that message. I will say it's nice to hear a reminder from, responsible adults who are in charge being like, oh, yeah, these are regular people. These are people who are paid to do a job. By the way, a job that has been implemented by Republicans and Democrats and implementing laws that were passed on a bipartisan basis by Congress over the years. That's what they are tasked with doing. Not implementing Trump's martial law and being Donald Trump's Gestapo, but just, doing the duties of ICE. And, a lot of this chaos, as we've talked about the last few weeks, has been driven by motivations that are out there on social media, by bad actors trying to sow that chaos and sow that disdain for these Americans who are once again doing a job. And that has created some very dangerous situations. That's what the result of all that has been. So that commercial stood out to me last night. And then there was this adoption commercial as well that got a lot of run.
I know you never expected this. The voices and the anger are so loud. I know you envisioned things differently. They're telling you that you've only got two choices. But the truth is, there's three. Are these options difficult? Of course they are. But you deserve to know. Adoption is an option.
So if you have not seen it, and I've got chills just listening back to it again, it is a young woman getting yelled at by women on both sides of the political aisle, my body, my choice, and choose life. And the point, obviously, is to promote a third option, which is adoption. And watching and listening to that commercial for now a third or fourth time, the goal of it is really to try to block out the noise. The goal of that ad is to say, hey, you got to stop with the politics of the moment and realize that this option is available to you. And yes, of course, the underlying theme is you are saving a life and you are choosing life in the process. But it's an option that oftentimes doesn't get as much attention when you're talking about either side of the political aisle. And I thought it was a very powerful ad. And if that impacted one person out of the 100 plus million people who watched the Super Bowl last night, then it was worth it in my book. And it was one of those ads that you typically may not see in a setting like that. And you saw it last night. So there were fun ads, like, Backstreet Boys had a big night. They had two commercials, Coinbase and T-Mobile, using Backstreet Boys songs. You had Ben Affleck in a Dunkin' Donuts commercial knocking off a Good Will Hunting. That was funny. But then you also had these ads as well. You had ICE getting some love, or at least getting humanized. You had adoption getting some love. And these are messages that, for all the talk about the halftime show and the negative and Green Day and all this other stuff, there were some silver linings as well in there. Now, somebody had to pay the price, obviously, for the $8 million ad to make it happen. But you know what? They deserve some celebration and some love as well here throughout the entire process. Next, there is a lawsuit happening here in the Kansas City area against DoorDash. And it's something that I had not really given a lot of thought to until I saw the lawsuit unfold, and we'll share it with you and get to your calls on this coming up next. So there's a new development in the story. The young woman who went to the University of Kansas, Elsa McGrain, 20 years old, she was jogging at about 6 p.m. on November 6th when she was struck by a car, and she ended up getting killed. That car driven allegedly by William Klingler. And now the family of Elsa McGrain has filed a lawsuit against the driver and against DoorDash. This according to Douglas County. The suit claims that the delivery company failed to verify the driver's identity and put an unfit driver behind the wheel. Now, this driver, he had 3 DUI convictions, charged with a 4th DUI in April of 2024. And this happened, obviously, all leading up to the fateful crash that took place on November 6th of last year. What I can't figure out is whether or not he was driving. I've read half a dozen stories on this, and I've not seen anything suggesting he was driving for DoorDash at the time of the crash. I don't know if you guys had seen that, but I was just curious to know if he was actually DoorDashing when he then hit the 20-year-old KU student, Elsa McGrain.
I guess I thought that was implied, so I didn't question. I see what you're saying.
I figured that would have been in one of these stories.
Okay.
And it's not clear to me that he was driving for DoorDash when this happened. But either way, it's another reason, and we've talked about this in a much more lighthearted way. I have no interest in DoorDash. If guys like this can end up driving for DoorDash and they're hiring people, allegedly, who have 3 DUI convictions, a 4th charge, and he's able to, start driving around hamburgers and hot dogs and pizzas for people. Listen, I say this in part because it's the phase of life I'm in, but if we're doing takeout, I don't mind running out for 5 minutes, get a little peace and quiet, go pick up the food and go home, okay? And Kate's had the same offer. Sometimes I say to her, yo, you get out there, you go grab it, it's all good. I'll stay home. I'll deal with some of the noise and the crazy. It's 5-10 minutes of peace and quiet. Okay, fine. No big deal. But it's not like, and I say this as someone who's 37, but I'm going to sound like an old guy when I say it's not like the old days. When I remember, as a kid, you'd order a pizza, right? And the delivery boy for the pizza company or the local pizza joint would be, Bob in high school. Bob's paying for college. Oh, yeah, there's Bob. We know his parents. He's, pizza delivery boy for the summer. You got DoorDash, and you don't know who they are. You got them showing up in unmarked vehicles. You don't know anything about their background. You don't know how much they care about your food. I mean, you think about the old days once again, and if Bob's paying his way through college by delivering pizzas, and he's delivering pizzas to family, friends, and people he may know, Bob's not going to spit on the pizza, okay? Bob's not going to take a French fry out of the to-go order. It's not going to happen, John. He's going to be ticked.
I see him come through my neighborhood, and they do things like they don't pull over to the curb when they stop. They're just kind of out in the street, and they get out the car, and they're tiptoeing around like, is there a dog coming? Am I at the right place?
Yes.
And then they'll finally drop the food and take a picture of it. But the whole while, the car's sitting out with the door open and running in the street, like, if I follow them around, you could jack a car pretty quick.
I think it's a major problem. And I think it'll just take a couple of high-profile cases to put DoorDash in a tough spot. Now, I've never liked the DoorDash model either because the other thing it does is that it puts mom-and-pop restaurants in very difficult spots. They're oftentimes having to pay a fee to DoorDash. They're taking the hit for DoorDash to go deliver the food to you. So if you want to support small businesses, the other part of this is, hey, go get the food because then the company that you're buying the food from gets to keep all of the revenue from the food that you bought instead of kicking DoorDash some money for who knows what. Hiring people like this, allegedly, to go drive food around Douglas County in this case? It's terrible.
I'll go hungry before I use it, brother, and it'll just be a lesson learned, right? You got to plan your work and work your plan. If you can't get out and you don't get around, then you go to the grocery store and you get some food so you don't need to rely on food that's not necessarily in your best interest health-wise.
Yes, exactly. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. 913-408-7957. Pete, I'm always seeing sketchy cars in my Prairie Village neighborhood delivering food as well. I mean, that's kind of a common theme I'm seeing right now on the text line. I'm just not paying enough attention, to be honest. I mean, I see the Amazon cars, obviously, the UPS trucks and things like that. But when you've got unmarked vehicles, which obviously DoorDash drivers are, I don't think that they have a little thing they can put on the roof of their car, right? Like the Pizza Hut
Well, it's
delivery
not like
boy.
Uber, not that I've seen. I mean, sometimes when you work, my son had a Pizza Hut one, or when he worked for Domino's or whoever, and he had one, but he worked for the company like he talked about in the old days.
You could pop it on the roof of the car, right, if you don't have one of their vehicles. And it's like, okay, there's a pizza delivery boy driving around the neighborhood.
Well, even the Uber blue light looks a little weird. You'll see it on people's dash early in the morning when it's dark. You're like,
Yes.
what's that? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Or late at night.
It's Uber, it's Lyft. You kind of know what their logos are, so you see them in the vehicles, in the front through the car. But you don't see that on DoorDash. And it just makes me wonder when this is going to end. On the text line, Pete, I'm sure DoorDash is going to argue that these are gig workers, and they'll say independent contractors, so therefore they don't have the same liability as they would for an employee. That may be true, but you're hiring somebody to do something like drive. Uber has to have some standards in all this. You can't have people driving with 3 DUI convictions. Why would DoorDash allow such a thing? And if that turns out to be something that they allowed to slip through the cracks, and they're letting anybody, I mean, do they check legal status on DoorDash? I don't know. I'm just wondering these things. But do they check any of that as they're going through the process of hiring people? Or if you literally have 2 working legs and 2 working arms, they don't care much else about you. If you can make them money, they will use you as basically slave labor. They'll send you out there and they'll let you deliver to whoever you want. If that's true, then I think we've got a problem on our hands, just societally speaking, because it hurts the business, it potentially hurts people in neighborhoods, and there's a major downside. And by the way, I don't know, I don't do it a lot, but how good is the delivery service to begin with? I keep coming back to that anyway. What's the value here of all this?
Maybe one thing that doesn't get talked about, I've worked in where you hire people, and when you call, if you're actually trying to track someone's history record and you call a previous employer, they can only say so many things. They can't tell you like, oh, we fired the bum because he didn't show up.
Yeah.
They can basically say, oh, yeah, he worked here. Here's the dates he worked here. No, we won't rehire him.
Here's the other part to your point there, John. The other thing about these gig jobs is you turn on the app when you want, right? You work when you want. It's not like Uber says, hey, you're working 6 to midnight, and if you don't show up, air quotes, well, you're going to get slapped on the wrist. You turn on the app when you want to work. So you can't really get a vibe on somebody's work ethic or background through any of these apps because it's just whenever you turn the thing on is when you choose to work. On the text line, Pete, they do have a magnet logo you can choose to put on your car or not. Okay, I have not seen that. I will take that texter at their word. I have not seen that before, though. And what they should do is make that stuff mandatory. And that better be a big old logo that people can see from their cars, they can see from their homes, they can see from the streets. Not like a little magnet that's 3 inches by 3 inches that nobody can see unless you're kind of squinting.
One of my neighbors gets DoorDash or Uber Eats all the time, so we have a lot of that in my neighborhood. But a lot of the times they can't see the address. So I'm out with the dogs, and they come and ask me, hey, where's this place? So I always, it's them. They're the ones that always get it.
Wait, okay, 2 things there that annoy me about that story, Mark.
Yeah.
If you get nonstop DoorDash, would you have your address out clearly on the street?
I agree with that.
Okay? All right, Mark's now ripping his neighbor, which I love. If you get a lot of DoorDash or Uber Eats, and there's a problem with these delivery drivers finding your home, would you make it clear where you live with some kind of signage so that Mark's not getting rolled up on in the dark while he's walking a dog, being like, sir, where is, 11834 Pine Street?
No, to Mark's point, I've got my black numbers on my gray house.
Yeah.
You can't see them from the street, right?
No.
Ours are clearly, indicated, but you go down our street, I bet you can't pick out 7 out of 20.
That's terrible.
Where you could literally read them from the street.
And if you are getting that much delivery, you better make it clear where you live.
Should be a pass, some ruts right there. Just follow the wagon train.
They should be charging another 10% in my book there. That's unbelievable. So, Mark, you deal with this all the time then, and you get some sketchy drivers coming up on you?
Not sketchy. The funniest, maybe not funny, but the funniest one was one lady didn't really know how to speak English very well.
Yeah.
So she's like, trying to say the numbers to me, and I'm like, I just said, it's them next door.
You just point to the house.
Yeah, I just point to the house. I'm like, there it is.
There it is. Well, that was a complaint on the text line, too, that you have issues where, if people aren't speaking English, then you got a language barrier there, and that can be problematic in certain situations. So, man, I don't know how the lawsuit's going to play out in Douglas County. I don't. But I think this story should be getting a lot of attention if DoorDash is hiring people with 3 DUI convictions. That is a terrible look for the company. 913-408-7957. And, yeah, I'm sorry, but speaking English should be a requirement for the job. Okay, you may have to interact with customers in the language of this country. Like that's not controversial. It's not anti any other language. It's just pro the language of the country that you're in right now. If you want to work here, that's how it should be. It reminds me, I've told this story on the air, but when my father's father was young in the 1930s in New York City as a first-generation American, and his mother spoke Italian to him in the grocery store, he ran home because he was embarrassed. He wanted her to speak English. He wanted to be an American. He wanted to live and be a member of the country that he was in. And we have gone so far away from that. And like Bad Bunny last night, case in point, right? Case in point with Bad Bunny last night. Hey, if the Super Bowl halftime show doesn't have to be in English, why would I learn it? Why would I want to adapt? But there's a reason that countries have a culture. There's a reason that countries have a language. It's good for all of us. It's communal to be able to speak to all of us and each other in one language. That's a good thing, and we should cherish that and celebrate that. And it's not being against, a country that you came from or a language that you may also happen to speak if you're bilingual. It's not being against that. It's about building a culture within this melting pot of America around one language that does allow us all to interact with each other and in many ways bring us all together, because that's what it's about. When I see Bad Bunny last night, at the very end, you may have seen, if you were watching the halftime show, Bad Bunny holding the Puerto Rican flag, and he's got like 20 people behind him, and they're all holding flags from different countries. There's some insinuation that was intended to be and supposed to be like a knockoff of people crossing the border. I don't know if I believe that or not. I'll set that aside for now. But there was a big sign on the Jumbotron behind them that said the only thing that beats hate is love. I'm okay with that message. But how do we love each other if we can't interact with each other? How do I love you as a neighbor if, by the way, you come here and you do it the right way, but then we don't have a way to interact with each other? I'm not saying I can't love you for who you are, but it's very difficult to find the commonality if there's not something that unites us. And if we can't, at the very least, want to unite based on the language that we all speak, then are you really interested at all in uniting? And that's one of the many questions I come out of last night thinking about. We'll get to your calls here coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, streaming as always on the KCMO Talk Radio app, 913-408-7957. The Olympics got underway this weekend. We'll get into it in the 9 o'clock hour as well. There were some cultural moments there getting a lot of attention. I want to focus on the good as much as anything else right here on KCMO. Really, it's nothing as pathetic as watching a bunch of sports writers and politicians in their 50s and 60s pretending to like Bad Bunny just because they want to like stick it to the right or something.
Right,
right.
It's
So funny, isn't it? I saw John Kasich. Remember him? He ran for president back in 2016 being like, oh, that was amazing. We love you, Bad Bunny. Nothing like a 73-year-old dude being like, I'm going to stick it to Trump by saying I love Bad Bunny while having absolutely no idea what was being said last night.
Why, yes, as a matter of fact, I am down.
How do you do? Oh, my gosh. All right, here was Morning Joe Scarborough this morning putting his own spin on this whole deal. This is Joe Scarborough just hours ago on Bad Bunny.
You're getting the biggest artist in the world. And if you're the NFL and you like capitalism, why not? So I don't know why these socialists hate capitalism so much and they hate a company doing what's best for their bottom line, but they obviously do. I feel sorry for them. Maybe they should read some Noam Chomsky because this is American capitalism at its best.
Yeah, it was purely American. The capitalism and the message. And
oh my! It was American capitalism at its best. That's the twist that Joe Scarborough puts on it this morning on MSNBC. Sorry, MS Now is what they're calling it. Okay, let's just take a step back and analyze what Joe Scarborough just said here. Joe Scarborough just said that it was capitalism at its finest to have Bad Bunny do the halftime show because he may be or is one of the biggest artists on the planet. What is also capitalism is what Turning Point USA did, which was create options for the customer. That's capitalism. The NFL is actually running a socialist racket because there is no other option. If you're a football fan, there is no legitimate alternative, so they can abuse their core consumer. That is socialism. The NFL has a socialist operation going, which is why they could pick Bad Bunny and basically tell their core audience to stick it. What Turning Point USA did was say, here's another option for you. And I was mocking the whole thing last week. I thought Kid Rock was going to be a joke. I'm not going to lie about that. I was wrong. It was a pretty good show, especially considering it was whipped together in a couple of months. That's capitalism. Creating options for the consumer is capitalism. It was Turning Point USA that was capitalistic, not the NFL.
Touche. I was going to say, MJ, you have a point if we were talking about going to a Bad Bunny concert.
Yes.
But we're not. I was going to a football game, and I'm stuck with this horse crap. That sounds like another form of government.
Yes. And that's what the NFL basically did for years. We're going to stick this to you because you have no choice. You're going to complain about it. You're going to say, this stinks, but you've got no other option. Right now, I'll tell you what. If I spent $8 million last night on an advertisement that ran during halftime, I'm calling up Goodell today and I'm saying, hey, I saw this Turning Point USA halftime show got at minimum 20 to 30 million people watching it. I didn't get my money's worth on that $8 million ad I paid for. Give me a rebate. Give me a refund. Give me something. That's the call I'm making if I'm a CEO whose commercial ran during halftime last night. I'm just saying it does open up a door for future halftime shows to go in a different direction. And the Super Bowl was one of the few things we had that was communal in this country left. Really the last major communal thing we had. And the NFL overplayed its hand. And now that, when it comes to the halftime show, not the game, but the halftime show going forward is also going to be divisive. And the NFL did that to itself. But Scarborough trying to make a case, man, he had that whole thing backwards. Wow.